An historic global conference aimed at laying the groundwork for intensifying global mobilization against Israel's military action in Gaza ended this past weekend. Organizers set targets aimed at developing comprehensive political, legal, public diplomacy and media strategies to isolate Israel's regime of oppression, according to their statement. A number of organizations were represented, along with renowned South African freedom fighters. Speakers included Declan Kearney, who's the chairperson of Sinn Féin, the Reverend Munter Isaac from Bethlehem, and Dr Mustafa Barghouti, leader of the Palestinian National Initiative. And Dr Barghouti joins me now. Good morning to you and welcome again to South Africa. Thank you very much for coming into our studio. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
I think let's just start with a little bit of detail around the Palestinian National Initiative. What is that?
The Palestinian National Initiative is a new political movement and political and social movement that we founded 20 years ago exactly, with people like Haidar Abd al-Shafi, the well-known intellectual Edward Said and others, to represent a democratic third alternative that is independent from both Fatah and Hamas, but that works very hard for bringing back internal democracy between Palestinians and to create national unity between Palestinians. It conducts resistance against occupation, against oppression, against the system of apartheid, and it has been in the avant-garde in advocating that what we have in Palestine is a much worse system of apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa at one point of time.
Why do you think we hear more about Hamas and Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah and not enough about the Palestinian National Initiative?
Well, the Palestinian National Initiative now is the third force in Palestine, and it has grown dramatically during the last 7 months. But people are used to history, so they talk mainly about Fatah and Hamas. And of course, Hamas has played a very strong role in Palestinian resistance during the last 7 months. So of course, it's natural that there will be a lot of talk about them.
I want to go to this. We'll talk about the conference in just a moment, but I think it's important that people also understand the context in which you operate. Hamas representatives were there at this global dialogue as well. The impression that the world has of Hamas differs variously from terror group to freedom fighters. How would you describe support for Hamas amongst Palestinian people?
The main reason why people support Hamas is because they support resistance. And even if we're not doing military actions, we also have gained a lot of support because people support our approach of resistance, rejecting occupation, rejecting the myths like Oslo Agreement, and insisting on full and complete freedom of the Palestinian people. There is another factor, of course, which is the heavy casualties that have happened because of Israeli terrible criminal bombardments of the people in Gaza. I don't know if all people know, but Israel has killed during the last 7 months 42,000 Palestinians, including 8,000 who are still under the rubble we cannot get to, including 17,000 children and no less than 10,000 women. Add to that 80,000 people who have been injured, and I'm a medical doctor and we run huge medical operation in Gaza. I tell you, many of the 80,000 people who were injured will not survive because Israel destroyed most medical facilities. They destroyed 34 hospitals out of 36 up till now, and 2 of my colleagues, doctors, nurses, and health professionals and ambulance drivers were killed by the Israeli bombardment. Israel did not allow any foreign journalists to enter Gaza, and they killed Palestinian journalists to prevent the world from knowing the truth. More than 142 Palestinian journalists were also killed by the Israeli army, and intentionally. Yesterday, I saw a comment by Lindsey Graham, the American senator, saying that Israel must use nuclear bombs against Gaza, which is a fascist statement, in my opinion. But little he knows that the amount of explosives that Israel used on Gaza, most of which is American bombs, is 80,000 tons of explosives, which is more than double the amount of explosive power of both nuclear bombs that were thrown on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So this atrocity, the fact that 2.3 million people have been subjected to collective punishment, ethnic cleansing, and genocide of course makes people very angry. And of course they see that the only way to stand up to Israel is to resist this terrible injustice.
Which is what I want to go to next. And what's useful in conversations like these is for those who aren't following the historical origins of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, to be able to deepen their understanding. Now, the world, many parts of the world, let's say, measures the conflict from October the 7th, painting Hamas as the aggressor, catalyzing a conflict that has snuffed out the lives of 35,000 or 42,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. What is missing from this characterization? Tell us the story of how you got
such
here.
characterization is simply ignorant and, of course, in the worst case scenario, intentional to mislead the public about reality. This story did not start on the 7th of October. We commemorate tomorrow the 76th anniversary of the Nakba, when Israel in 1948 was established by committing no less than 70 massacres against Palestinian people and forcing 70% of the Palestinian people to be evicted from their homes, destroying and eliminating to the ground no less than 520 villages and communities. 70% of the population of Gaza are refugees who were displaced in 1948 by Israel. So the story did not start on the 7th of October. We've had the longest ethnic cleansing so far, where 7 million Palestinians are refugees unable to come back home, while any Jewish person anywhere in the world could land in the airport in Israel and immediately grant citizenship, will be granted citizenship. But more than that, in 1967, Israel also occupied West Bank and Gaza, and I lived all my adult life under Israeli military occupation, which is 57 years of the longest military occupation in modern history.
I want to talk about how that pathologizes resistance. Talk to us about why, because if people, for people who don't understand why there is this reaction to what's happened in the history that you've described. What does that build? What does that foment in a person, in their psyche?
Well, imagine your life if you are a Palestinian. You've been displaced from your land. You lost everything. You lost your home, you lost your land, you lost everything. And you became a refugee in a refugee camp in the West Bank and Gaza. And then they come back to you and try to evict you again, destroying all your home, your house, destroying your business, killing your children, killing your family. I know a woman in Tulkarem, which I visited recently, in the West Bank, not in Gaza, in a refugee camp. Her family was displaced in 1948 when she was a little kid. She lost 5 of her sons in 4 months, 4 of whom were killed by the Israeli army. So we don't have safety, we don't have security. Israel can steal any of our land and confiscate it officially. And then they bring illegal settlers to settle on our land, as they do in the West Bank. And these settlers are armed by the Israeli army, and they become gangs, burning Palestinian houses, shooting Palestinian people. We've lost so many people, so many lives, and we have
intergenerationally
been oppressed continuously, without security, without economic prosperity, without anything. Our life is in danger all the time for the last 76 years because of Israeli aggression. Nothing of what I am telling you, nothing of our resistance is against Jewish people as people. On the contrary, I know very well the history of Jewish people. I know how much they suffered in the Holocaust and because of anti-Semitism. But Palestinians have never been anti-Semitic. We are Semites too. But we have become, as Edward Said said, the victims of the victims. And in my opinion, the same mindset that allowed the oppression and persecution of Jewish people in the Holocaust is the same mindset that is allowing now persecution and a Holocaust of Palestinians, because what's happening in Gaza cannot be described except as a terrible genocide and Holocaust.
This next question has a long lead-in, so just bear with me because I think the context is important. Given that despite worldwide protests, widespread condemnation for Israel's military moves at the highest levels, our Minister Naledi Pandor highlighted South Africa's December filing of that genocide case at the ICJ. It was a move that was supported by many countries, regional blocs and hundreds of advocacy groups. And then in January, the ICJ found that there was a plausible case for Israel committing genocide in Gaza, ordering the Israeli government to prevent further genocidal acts. This by, according to a number of activists or human rights monitors, say Israel has ignored, largely by blocking humanitarian aid. Given all the pressure, all the solidarity, all the moves at the highest level, Dr. Barghouti, why do you think no one has yet been able to stop the death of another Palestinian?
Because governments in the West are biased to Israel, because the United States of America is allowing this atrocity to continue. And let me remind you that when you struggled in South Africa against apartheid, the people were first with you, then gradually the civil society and the parliaments, and the last to come were governments. And definitely the last government to come was the United States of America. And we are facing the same situation. Unfortunately, we see now a global revolution, unbelievable revolution. The younger generation in the United States, everywhere in the world, is standing up for Palestine. But the governments don't. The governments think about the profits that the military-industrial complex should make. They think about the profits that Israel provide to them by being a base, a military base for them, controlling the supply of oil and all of that. So there is a big gap between what people think and what governments think. And you know, when they say that they call some Palestinians terrorists, it reminds me of the fact, I was once on CNN, and they asked me about that. And I said, you know, when Mandela was already the president of South Africa, and every American president was trying to get a photo opportunity with him, Mandela was still on the terrorist list of the American Congress, like we are today. So there is a very clear link here in history. Things will change when the public pressure, which is happening now in South Africa, happening in Europe, happening everywhere, when the public mobilization and public pressure will grow to a level that forces government to change. And that's what I hope for. And this new conference about creating a global anti-apartheid movement is important in that regard.
You warned a few days ago that if Israel attacks Rafah with its estimated 1.4 million people clustered in a very small area, it will be the largest ever massacre in human history. Why do you believe that? It's
already happening. Already Israel has forced 450,000 people in Rafah to be evicted to nowhere. You see, people were evicted from the north to the center, claiming that this is for their safety, and then from the center to the south, and then to Rafah. And there were about 1.6 million people in Rafah, and claiming that they are there because it's a safe zone. Now they are attacking Rafah. Where should they go? They're attacking Rafah, and at the same time they're attacking the north of Gaza and the center of Gaza. Israel is committing not only genocide. This crazy man, Netanyahu, who's a war criminal, is trying to destroy every structure in Gaza. He doesn't want to leave any inch in Gaza that is not destroyed. He has already destroyed more than 75% of all homes, all universities, all schools, most hospitals. It's amazing. And he continues. He continues with this barbaric attack. And that's why I think there will be a huge massacre in Rafah if the world doesn't stop him.
What do you think it will take to do that?
Sanctions. The only thing that will deter Netanyahu are sanctions, especially military sanctions, stopping supplies of military weapons to Israel. And that is where the West is responsible. Britain, United States, Germany, and many other Western governments that are supplying them with arms. I don't think he will stop, except with two things. First of all, we do hope that ICJ will respond to the third request of South Africa to issue an order of stopping military actions in Gaza. That would help a lot. I hope that ICC will stop procrastinating and also make an order to call Netanyahu and other military leaders for war crimes. And finally, I think sanctions, immediate sanctions on Israel, would play a very important role. But I want to tell you something. Whatever they do, we as Palestinians will not break. We will never surrender. We will not stop struggling for our rights. Because now for us, it's either life and freedom or death.
Is this the general consensus amongst Palestinians?
Absolutely. The vast majority think in this way.
I want to go back to this inaugural global anti-apartheid conference on Palestine, and it was described as a watershed event, which saw the Reverend Frank Chikane declare that we must make sure that we mobilize the world. These are his words, and free the people of Palestine. How important was this moment for the Palestinian cause?
Well, I must first say that we are very thankful and appreciative to the government of South Africa that allowed this to happen, especially to Naledi Pandor, who attended the conference, but to the South African people in general, who have been so generous in their support and solidarity with Palestine, because I think they see their history in our struggle. But I think this is, yes, a turning point, because we are talking here about creating a global anti-apartheid movement, similar to the global anti-apartheid movement that helped bring down the apartheid and oppression system in South Africa. And that's why we hope that the same forces that played the role in bringing down apartheid in South Africa will continue to govern here and continue to help us in solidarity with Palestine.
Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. Appreciate your time. He's the leader of the Palestinian National Initiative. Still ahead on